Hey everybody, it's Chris Fletcher from MusicBizMentors and welcome to our podcast Making Money Making Music. Today we're going to meet Arielle Silver. So I wanted to read a little bio for her before we get started. So here we go. An ethic of care runs through Arielle Silver's music. Each song ushers listeners to tune into their own relationship with both people and the more than human world. Arielle's rich lyrics, pop folk artistry, and enhanced stagecraft has earned her recognition at the South Florida Folk Festival, in which she won the 2025 Music Award, Tucson Folk Festival, two-time finalist, International Acoustic Music Awards, second place, a big contest, ASCAP Plus Awards, three-time recipient, among other accolades. Watershed single and official videos premiered in the Bluegrass Situation, Americana Highways, and Twangville, and spent 18 weeks on the American Music Charts. Her her in between her rigorous national tour schedule, she teaches yoga at her own online studio and creative writing at Antioch University. She is also program manager for the nonprofit organization called SONA, which is Songwriters of America, and is former president of the Folk Alliance, which is the Far West. This girl is busy and she's taken some time out to talk to us. Please welcome Arielle Silver. Okay, everybody, Arielle is here. Welcome, Arielle. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping that we can start with your training, your music training,
Mm,
because everybody comes from somewhere else. So I thought maybe that you can kind of share that with us.
yeah. Well, I had informal training and then formal training, and then I guess informal again. I started out when I came onto this planet Earth. My father was a young guy. My parents were quite young when they had me, and my dad was just a dude with a guitar. He was just like that hippie dude with an acoustic guitar, sitting around with his friends, playing Cat Stevens and Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell and Joan Baez, and then he had a baby girl sitting at his feet with his, he's playing all these songs on his guitar. So, from the time I was nothing, you know, through my young childhood, especially, my dad was playing acoustic guitar and singing and playing songs. He was not a songwriter, but he was playing songs written by some of the greatest troubadour storytelling songwriters of the time. And he was just playing the songs that he loved. And then in the car, we were listening to John Denver and Judy Collins, and Judy Collins. Of course, at the time, I didn't know the difference between a singer performing the songs and the songwriters behind the scenes. But listening to Judy Collins was also a great uh, exposure, I guess, to some really wonderful songs because she is an incredible singer and she did her own versions of all of these, Leonard Cohen again and, et cetera, Joni Mitchell, et cetera. So that was my sort of informal start. And then I went to public school. We had a pretty good music program in public school. I had a babysitter who played clarinet and in third grade, my class had the opportunity to learn a violin type of instrument. And I hated the violin because it wasn't so much the violin, although, beginning violin really is rough on the ears. But also we had to leave our reading class in order to go to the violin class. And as much as I loved music, I equally loved books. I learned to read at a very early age and just hated that I had to leave reading class to go to the squeaky violin class in the basement of the school. So I didn't tell my parents, but I had this rented violin. They thought I was going to violin lessons, and at the end of the year when we had our concert, I sat with my parents in the audience and they were like, "Why are you over here? We thought we came to see you perform." Um, and, the next year, all the students were exposed to wind instruments. And my babysitter played clarinet. And so my folks decided that I should play clarinet and my babysitter could give me private lessons. And what I really wanted was to play piano. And my folks said, we can't afford a piano, but if you stick with the clarinet, one day you will get a piano one day. But don't quit. Don't do what you did with the violin. And so I thought they meant for all time. And several years later, I was still playing clarinet, and I was really good compared with my classmates because I had been taking private lessons with my babysitter the whole time, and then at some point in time had switched over to taking lessons with her teacher, and I had ended up in a bunch of extracurricular woodwind ensembles, symphonic concert bands, and orchestras, and eventually all state band. I was in choir during high school and all state choir, and had some really wonderful teachers, and I was excelling, and so it felt good. I was getting those, like, dopamine hits. I was getting awards, or just achieving that sense of achievement. And I didn't really love the clarinet, to be honest. I did love the music. It's not that I hated the clarinet, it's just that I didn't love it. It was just the thing that I had chosen, sort of happenstance, my babysitter, and I was really holding out for the piano. And at some point in time, I did end up taking piano lessons. I took oboe lessons. I played saxophone in the jazz band. And eventually, when I went to college, I studied classical and then Renaissance woodwinds in college. And it was in college that I bought a $75 acoustic guitar. And it was as soon as I had the guitar in my hands, without the clarinet in my mouth, I found that I could sing, right? Like suddenly my hands were freed up. I could play chords instead of just single notes like the woodwind instruments, and I could sing at the same time and accompany myself. And immediately I started writing songs. I wasn't interested in learning other people's songs. I had, by that point, kept years and years of journals. I'm now a lifelong journaler. Every morning I journal, and so poetry and lyricism and just playing with English language and occasionally French, which I had also studied. So when I finally got the guitar, it was this it felt like these disparate parts of myself, the musical training, the troubadour background, the songs and the singer and the English language, the use of language to express the inner landscape, emotions, and also reflect the outside world. It's like all of this kind of swirled together. And I started writing songs while studying Renaissance and classical woodwinds as well. And when I graduated from college, by then I was busking on the street. I was living in Boston. I was busking in Harvard Square. I was playing venues all around Boston. I put together a band. I started to tour. Went back to school to study songwriting, and I went to Berklee College of Music after that on a clarinet scholarship. But while I was there, I studied songwriting. I took a lot of songwriting classes, and ended up with a small record deal. It was a indie label in Boston owned by a composer who had written some clarinet pieces that I was featured on, and over time he found that I was a songwriter as well, and he signed me to his label, and I released a few records back then, toured with my band. And so that was all before I moved to LA. That was long before I ever met you. And that was my whole background up until up until the age group that you were talking about, through my childhood, teens, and early 20s. And then I moved to LA to quit music. I was burned out. And so when you met me, it was after I had been living in Los Angeles for a while, and I was working behind the scenes in the music industry, and I had effectively left music. I was still performing clarinet and harmonium, which is a keyboard organ, pump organ kind of thing, and singing background vocals in some world music bands.
Mhm.
But I was not out there as a songwriter. I was writing still, but not a lot. And I had lost all ambition, all drive, all vision for myself um, as a performing singer-songwriter. And I think I still had like a little bit inside me that still wanted to be a professional musician, but it's like I didn't fully leave it, but I largely left it all because I was just burned out and I didn't understand why I was burned out or how to find my way back. It was kind of like it was a beautiful decade actually of not being focused on music. But it in some ways was like I went through the dark night of the soul during that time and I was searching for my way back to myself, and I first found my way back to myself, which I felt like I had never really established for myself who I was outside of being a performing songwriter. So it was in that time that I found my way back to who I am as a whole human, and eventually that led me back to writing songs and wanting to bring them out into the public ear, to perform them and record them.
So about when was that you said something and you said, I'm going to do this again?
Yeah. It was in I went during that, 10-year period of time, I went back to school. I got a master's degree in creative writing, an MFA in creative writing. And and I had also done a deep dive into yoga. I had been practicing yoga for a long time and I had done my first teacher training. I became a yoga teacher. I was really engaging in meditation and body, mind, spirit practices and English language alone without the music part of it. Like, I was doing all of these things and somehow that all swirled together. And in 2017 or 18, um, I was doing well with my master's program, my MFA program. I was doing well. I got a few awards. I was, demonstrating skill in research areas and things like that. And so I thought, maybe the thing that I'm searching for lies in academia. Maybe I should be a teacher. Maybe I should go back to school after my master's, get my PhD, and really be working and teaching in higher ed. And so I applied to a PhD program, and by then I was really rooted in Los Angeles. I was married. I had a couple of stepdaughters who were on the younger side at that time, and we were living our life here, and so I didn't want to apply to a program that was outside of Los Angeles because that would, I wouldn't be able to uproot the family that I had here, stepdaughters that go back and forth between our house and the other household and I didn't want to leave this life either. So I applied to one PhD program here. It's the only one that exists here in Southern California, I believe, but certainly in Los Angeles. And and I waited. I felt really great about the application, and it was an extremely competitive program, but it was the only one to apply to. Um, on in 2018, on President's Day weekend, February, I woke up that Saturday morning, and I had been feeling really uncertain about this academic path. I had been thinking, wow, I intellectually I love the challenge, but emotionally I'm not happy when I'm in that world, just living in pages of research. Um, like I enjoyed it intellectually, but I felt somber. And President's Day weekend, I woke up on Saturday and I opened my email and there was a letter from the college, the university that I applied to. And it was thank you for applying. There were many applicants, but we can't offer you a spot right now. And I felt like I was almost lifted on wings, like lifted up out of the doldrums that I had the dread that I had kind of been in, like, oh gosh, if I'm accepted, I'm going to say yes. But then I was not accepted. And I floated out here for some reason to the spot where I'm sitting right now. This was I'm sitting in a shed, but this did not exist. that weekend, President's Day weekend 2018. This is a spot behind the garage. It was a forgotten, shady spot that had been a raised bed garden. It was fenced in, but nothing could grow here because it's in full shade pretty much. And it was forgotten. It was behind the garage. Like you couldn't see it from the house. You couldn't even see it from the backyard or anything. And I floated my way back here and I was like, I just feel like cleaning up the old debris that's back there, the fallen branches, the mulching leaves. And as I was doing it, I was starting to notice the broken irrigation system. I pulled it all up. I undid the raised bed that was back here, and I brought my sweetheart back here after I had done all this cleaning, and we stood back here, and I was like, look what I've done. And Darby was like, you know what you could do back here? And I was like, what? And he was like, you could build a she shed. And he spoke the words out loud that I had been thinking.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, I really want that, but I don't know why I want that. I feel like I need a room of my own to to create something in, but I don't know what it is I want to create. And I was like, maybe this is just like one of those moments in life where you don't know all the things, but you just have to follow each glimmer of curiosity and just like step on the stone and see where the next stone is and then take another step. And so over the next month or two, I ended up building this shed. And as I was building it, I was thinking, maybe I'll start a podcast. Maybe I'll interview creative people from all different walks of creativity and find out about the dark night of their soul. Like when were they burned out and find their way back? I was very curious, to see from others navigated that. And when the shed was built, pretty much immediately, I was still working my day job in the industry, and I came home and I opened up my clarinet case and I pulled out some really probably it was the Mozart clarinet concerto because that's usually the first thing I pull out. Um, I came back, I came into the shed, I set up my music stand and I started playing Mozart. And for the next 6 weeks, every day after work, I would come out here and I would play clarinet. And I started thinking, wow, maybe this is really the thing that I should come back to. And then 6 weeks of that, I looked at the wall and I saw my guitar hanging on the wall. And I was like, actually, today I really want to write a song. And that was it. I wrote this song and then I wrote another and I wrote another. I spent the rest of the year writing songs. And it was by the end of 2018 that I was like, I think I want to make a new album. I want to collect a few of the songs that I've written this year and see how it feels to record. And I was just still following step by step. I was follow back to myself, really.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear that from a lot of people. I mean, even when I was talking to Freebo, he was a bass player. And then
Hmm.
he said, from out of frustration of trying to like make more of people's songs and, maybe we can do this and, maybe those words aren't right, that he said, I sat down, started writing songs. And so at
Yeah.
the age of 40, he started becoming a songwriter. And
Mm.
so he's been doing it for the last 20 plus years. And they go on the road all the time. He found a partner that he can perform with and stuff like that. Really interesting how, I feel like that music chooses you and you don't choose it more than anything else, whether it's a musician or like me, like working with musicians, like
Yeah.
kind of it's part of your soul more than anything
You
else.
know what I found during that time was that, when I came back to writing songs, that first song, that first song that led to the next song, that led to the next song, I found myself thinking about the 10 years of, really where the field was laying fallow. And realizing that on a subconscious level, even though I hadn't been writing songs, even though I hadn't been performing, what I had been doing was listening to songs. And I think that every single human is attuned to something, maybe multiple things, but it's like when you're going shopping and you've decided that you want a blue car, and all of a sudden you see all the blue cars or all the Kias or whatever it is. It's like even when you don't even when you're not actively seeking something, if you're attuned to music, you're absorbing it, you're hearing it, and your subconscious mind is, at least for me, studying, what was hearing. I didn't even realize I was, and I had opinions about things like, oh wow, I like the way that turn of phrase happens, or that progression, or that melody and the groove, or whatever it was. During those years, I wasn't doing nothing. It's just that, and I was doing a lot of, non-musical things that were informing who I am and my values and all that stuff. But also musically speaking, my subconscious was really paying attention. And, I want to say that those, when you're in college, or that 18 to early 20s phase, you think that that's the rich time, and that's like, you don't realize, you haven't lived enough to realize that there is this there's often a time where the field is lying fallow, where you just have to do exactly what the farmers know you need to do with those fields, which is kind of like, let it rest, let it return, let the nutrients replenish without trying to mine and extract everything. And those times feel really weird as a human. I think that we despair during those times, some of us anyway. And then we come out the other side richer for that rest. Yeah, so I love hearing that about Freebo. That age 40 is when he and I have never spoken about, what that transition was from being a bass player to being a songwriter, but we've played shows together, and I know Alice, it's like we've crossed paths and played shows together, and I never really thought to ask him, was there a moment of transition there? But I'm not surprised to hear that it was around the age of 40, because I do think that there are certain times in life where, and around 40 is one of them, where there's sort of a shift, like an assessment, a reckoning, a self-reckoning of like, where have I been? Where would I like to go? And where am I right now, like in that trajectory? And do I need to make a fine tune or a major shift? What do I do now to align myself with the person that I want to be?
Yeah, I mean, for me it was 30, when I was back east, and I came out here to LA for just a little vacation with my niece. And by the time I
Yeah,
left, I was like, what's wrong with me? I should have been out there all along, you know? And
yeah,
and you know, I didn't know a soul out here, and people are like, you're going? Like,
yeah,
yeah, I'm just going. It's time for me to go, and
yeah,
and people are like, aren't you afraid? I'm like, no, I'm excited. You're confusing afraid and excited together, that kind of thing. But
yeah,
it was a start over for me, and because I was dabbling in working with musicians, but I was like, the goal is to come here and work in this industry. I don't know where yet. Like you said, I don't know where
yeah,
yet, but it's what I wanted to do more than anything else. And so, I continue to do that. I love working with new musicians to try to I feel like are saying something, and have, will give it the time that you need it, because it doesn't happen overnight, and they don't like, if they're 24, they're like, I want to go on the road. I go, you don't even have like an hour's worth of songs yet. So it's fine for them to reach that way, but it takes a development, and it takes a dedication to
yeah,
say, I have to and there's stuff, there's stuff that we do that's not fun, you know you know and so, there's the business side that you have to put that business hat on, and you have to direct yourself or ask others to help you with that kind of stuff. But it's really interesting that everybody has like a little shift that they make, and
Yeah.
go, this is it, this is me. This is who I am. I have to write. I have to
Yeah.
sing. I have to perform. It's my thing. Right? It's what your soul kind of talks to you about doing. And I really, and I think, and a lot of people that, during the pandemic when everything shut down, everybody got techie, and
Mm.
that helps now, with that kind of stuff. Of course, we didn't want to go through all that, but I think we learned a lot. I think we learned a lot. And the one thing that I think the big positive thing with the pandemic was that it went back to people watching people, singer-songwriters, go online and get their music fill by listening. And I feel like that has really brought some light to acoustic music, solo performers, folk music, acoustic music, that kind of stuff. And I think that's a positive at this point. I think people will
Mm.
sit down and listen. People want to sit down and listen. Where before I felt like it was like really hard to get people to do that. So like really interesting that, I might have a roommate. I said I was glad I had a roommate because I don't mind being by myself, but it was nice to be with somebody, that you could sit down with and stuff like that. But I said, I think we did pretty damn good, with what we did. And I can't tell you how many webinars I watched during that
Yeah.
time. And then you had a
Yeah.
series too
Yeah.
that involved your music and your writing.
Yeah.
And then, anything to keep you active and current, for me.
That period of time, I mean, what a strange thing that we went through that. What a strange thing that in our lifetimes we're just so privileged as Americans. That's what I thought at the time. We were so privileged as Americans to have never um experienced that kind of thing before. um or I want to correct myself and say that we did have the HIV crisis previously, and so we have had somewhat of a an experience of that, but on such a widespread level, we had been so privileged that we had never experienced that, and then to experience it was like, oh. But um, for me, there were a couple of guiding ideas that carried me through that time. One was, this idea that, okay, we might all die. A lot of people died, and
Mm,
I might die. But I might live also.
mm,
And if I get through this, um, where do I want to be on the other side? And do I want, who knows how long this will last? 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, who knows? But let's just say it's just 3 weeks. Well, I could use a little vacation, so I'm happy to just sit here for 3 weeks, right?
mm,
But let's just say it goes on for longer, which, as we know, it did. Let's say it goes on for longer. Um, the one of the things that I have had always wanted was, less busyness, more stillness. I have a wonderful household. I love my sweetheart. I love my family. I love my home. And so I was like, this is in some ways, if we don't die, in some ways, this is a dream come true to just spend this quiet time here.
mm,
So let me enjoy that, but also, let me not just sit around and twiddle my thumbs during this time, because if I am not as busy now as I had been for years leading up to this moment, why is it that I wanted to be less busy? What is it that I want with my time? If I have all the time in the world, what do I want to do with it?
mm,
And so I let that question and those answers, in many ways guide me. And then the other thing was that at the beginning of 2024, we had any inkling that this was going to be our future for for that period of time. When I entered the year 2020, I had given a lot of thought to what is my theme? What is my word of the year? What is my what am I what is the value that I want to inform my decisions for this year of 2020? What do I want to focus on? And at the beginning of the year, I had thought, I really want connection. It's not that I am at that point I had a new album that was about to come out. I had started performing again, and I was writing a lot of songs, and I thought, why am I what is the purpose? What is the underlying reason why for all of this? What am I seeking? And I realized that what I was seeking is human connection. I wanted to same reason that I had wanted to do that podcast that I never ended up doing. But I wanted to connect with humans about human ideas. Like I wanted to kind of celebrate the wabi sabi, the sadness and the joys of being human. And the word that I came to was connection. And so when the pandemic and the quarantine started, and we were all kind of flung into our individual boxes, and everything was closed, and we couldn't perform on stages or connect with audiences in person or play house concerts or go out to a bar to see music or anything. Like when we were not able to do any of that, I came back to that word connection, and I was like, okay, the how I was going to connect has changed, but the theme of the year and my underlying purpose has not changed. So how can I still achieve that? Like if I want to go to New York and the planes are no longer flying, but I really want to get to New York, how else can I get there? I can walk, I can bike, I can drive, I can take a bus or a train. Like there are other ways to go get to where you want to go. And so that was the reason, that was the inspiration, I should say, behind Tomes and Tunes, which was the podcast that I launched in March of 2020, where I talked with songwriters about books. Every week, I did 99 episodes, and I talked with songwriters all around the world, mostly the US, but also Europe and Canada and Australia. And we talked about books and creativity and how we were navigating the pandemic, and you know the dark night of the soul, and religion and spirituality and wellness and depression, addiction. We talked about so many things. And it achieved for me that the reason I was doing it was because I wanted to connect, and I was connecting with the other songwriter via, the Zoom or whatever platform I used. And I was connecting with the people that tuned into the podcast and were, chiming in and watching. And the other thing it did, accidentally, I guess, or, I wasn't really thinking about it, but 99 episodes, 99 conversations, what it did was connect me with other songwriters regardless of geography. And so I made acquaintances and friends, connections, colleagues, across the US in the different markets. And so as the world and the venues started to open up again, I wasn't starting from scratch as I would have if I had been sitting there during the quarantine doing nothing and just, enjoying my, sweet life here. I actually had moved forward in my career during a time when you couldn't travel.
Yeah. I, you know, and I have talked to people who just sat there, right? And just kind of waited. And then, I, and then they, in 2022, 23, they're going, oh, I have to put some music out. And I'm like, you got to stay current, because if you don't, then you're starting over. I say the hardest thing to do is to start. The second hardest is to start over. For
Huh.
some reason, because there's a stop. You feel like you pay your dues and stuff like that, and for some reason you have to stop because there's illness in the family, or you need money for something because you got a kid or something like that, and sometimes you have to stop, and your life reflects that. But so coming back is hard because you have to
Well,
start over. So
yeah, and I had already done that, and it was hard. However, it's not like I mean, even for those people that kind of, use that time to rest and they didn't move forward in their career, like I was saying before about the field lying fallow, like you do need that time. We aren't machines, we are human, and there's a richness in life that is not only coming from our professional lives. And the difficult thing about being an artist, I think, is that your professional and your personal life, they bleed together so much. It's not like you go home from work every day. And especially if you're an independent artist, as I am, and most of the people in my world are, um, if you're not if you're it's like Fred Flintstone on the pedals. Like if you stop working the pedals, the car stops going. And um you know there are times when you need to stop working the pedals and you need to just like pull over and have a picnic on the side of the road for a couple of years, and kind of like I don't know that I absolutely agree with what you're saying about, if you're not doing work, then you're not moving forward. But I also think that there is a real beauty and necessity at not, and it doesn't always feel good, but there's a time, I have a friend, she's a wonderful singer-songwriter. She's a hustler. She's really been working hard for as long as I've known her. We went to Berkeley together many years ago, and um at some point in time over, in recent years, she was just like, I'm tired. Like I've put out a bunch of albums. I've been a road warrior. And she's like, I don't know what's going on right now, and I don't want my career to slip away, but I really need to rest. And she's been resting for a couple of years, and um, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I don't think that we don't need to judge it. Like there's other stuff that there's other areas of her life that are rich, and she's a human first. Um, so the only thing I rue, I guess, is like, man, she's such a good songwriter. I want to hear her next songs. But her next songs will be better for the time off, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Yeah, I always say that your personal life, you know, things get in the way, and sometimes it's because you need it, sometimes you have to I work with some people that get really, really busy and they're like running, and you go, okay, stop. Why are you doing that? Why do you have to fly in at noontime and fly at international at midnight on the same day? What are you doing? What are you running towards or from? Basically, why do you think every single second that you have to be moving, you know? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
that it gets to be that too, because you do get burnout, when you go too long to do things and stuff. You got to take a day. My day's Sunday. I take a Sunday
Uh,
off,
uh,
right? And so
yeah.
I go shopping, we go to lunch with a friend, I do my laundry, I get the food for the week, I go to the pool, all that kind of stuff. I try not to give
Yeah.
that Sunday up. Once in a while I have to, but you need a re, a personal day more than anything else. And
Something
that
that
only makes you better and richer in your life.
Yeah. My husband was a touring he's bass player and a keyboardist and was a touring musician for many years. And one of the things that I have really learned from him is that he enjoys life. Like he like every day wakes up and is like, I get to be here. Like I get to experience this human life again for another day. How cool is that? And one of the things that for me, the values of my upbringing did not include having fun. They did not include ease and peace and just appreciation of the world and this human life. And so this has really been like, excuse me, this has really been like a great influence on me. And whereas, part of the reason I burned out when I was younger as a touring musician was because always, I was so serious about it. I was so ambitious and so serious, and everything was hard, and everything was um like I had to do it. I have to, I have to, I have to, I should do, I should. I felt guilty if I didn't do it. I felt compelled that I had to do stuff. And instead of just like let me just enjoy this. So one of the things that has really helped I feel like it's a lot more sustainable now. What I'm doing now is that I'm 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 trying to enjoy all of it. Even the administrivia, even the emails and the all of that stuff. It's like I try to make it all enjoyable for myself, and I think it's probably more enjoyable for my fan base or my friends, my family, everybody that's around me. I think it's probably more enjoyable for them too. But like I'll have a nice meal. If I'm in an airport for a couple of hours between flights, it's like instead of pinching my pennies and just trying to like be like, so austere all the time with my time and my finances, with everything. I guess what it is that I had an adversarial relationship with myself for many years. And now it's like, well, you know, me, myself, and I, we're on a trip. We get to like be up and look at the earth from above the clouds. Like,
Mm.
okay, that's worth the price of the ticket. Like, that's freaking amazing, or I get to like and watch the people go by in the Denver airport for a while or catch up on the news or whatever. Um, I get to stay at this cool hotel or Airbnb or whatever it is I'm doing. Like I get to see these pockets of the country that I haven't seen in a long time or never. I'm just trying to like find the the curiosity and the joy, the pleasure in the journey, because at the end of life, that's all we will have had, rather than just like, oh, I was a hustler and I was a worker bee and I accomplished all this stuff. It's like, well, let me see if I can celebrate this experience.
And and really, yeah, like I said, I've been, watching all the things you've been doing and stuff like that. You've got quite a few accolades going on, with your songwriting and stuff like that, and that's not easy. There's a lot there's a lot of, shows the value of your work and how it affects people, I think, when you do go through and win this or become second place on that and stuff. It should be a validation for you. I don't know if it is or not, but it should be with that kind of stuff. And I looked, and you probably haven't even counted, but last year you did 55 performances that you listed, right? Um, that's and to me it looked like, and you did some on the East Coast, you did some here, you moved it around, that kind of stuff. And you know, some people I love people who do a lot of stuff on the road and stuff like that. Are you booking all your own stuff, or do you have somebody helping you?
Yeah, I'm primarily self-represented and primarily self-managed, self-booking. And so, that's primarily, and then sometimes I connect with someone else, for example, if I'm working a publicity campaign or a radio campaign, or I was working with a booking agent as like in a partnership for a while. So it's like these are sort of like one-off or temporary, I should say, projects that we work on together. So I'm largely self-booked, and then other times, they're representing me in those ways. But um, there's an empowerment that comes from being self-managed and self-represented. I get to have all the creative choices, so everything can be in alignment with my vision and what I want, and it can integrate into the rest of my life. So when I'm on the road, for example, I'm also sometimes leading yoga workshops or at local yoga studios or leading a retreat, or I teach creative writing at Antioch University. And so I teach via Zoom. I'm also teaching yoga via Zoom. So it's like while I'm on the road, I'm doing these things. I also do some work for I'm the program manager at a music nonprofit called the SONA Foundation. And so so I'm also producing some live stream programs, webinars, and some other stuff. So it's kind of a cool, like I get to make all those choices, and also say, well, you know what? Tonight I'm in New York City and I haven't seen a Broadway show for a long time. And Cabaret is on Broadway right now, and I am going to go to Cabaret. Like I get to make those kinds of decisions. Whereas if I'm, working, with, on a more permanent basis with somebody, their income is so tied to my income that it's not only my choice, so there's some ups and downs though also. It's really great to have a team, things go a little faster when you're working with someone, and so there's like a give and take there. And at some point in time I might make another choice. I might decide, okay, well, I want to play 150 shows a year. So in that case, I need to, I'm not going to be able to do that on my own. Um, you know, but right now the integration of everything it's like kind of, it feels like a sweet spot right now.
Yeah, it looks like a sweet spot. And so what's on the horizon? What are you looking this
Mm.
year, next year? Do you have a horizon, what you we're going after?
Um, well, yeah, a few different things. First of all, I'm getting back into a songwriting phase after having been promoting. I've been working on promoting Watershed, my newest album, for a little while now. I'm still performing those songs so much. I'm still so in love with those songs. But I have gotten back into the songwriting phase. That's one of the other things about, there's so much to do all the time. And when you are, um, you know, handling the business side and the creative side, there's just not enough time for everything. So I have to cycle around. Sometimes I'm playing more shows, sometimes I'm recording an album, sometimes I'm writing more songs. And so right now I'm back into the writing phase. I'm very excited about it. Curious, scared, scared that, when I turn that faucet on, nothing's going to come, and yet, something comes. So it's good so far. And then after that, hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have a collection of songs, and from that, I'll cull what I would like to record. So, that's on like the longer horizon. One of the things personally that I'm going to be doing this year is going on a backpacking trip to Europe. So I'm going to spend 2 weeks walking in Portugal and Spain. So I'm
Are you
very
going to do the,
excited
are you
about
going to do
that.
the Camino walk? Harold did that.
I
Yeah.
am, yeah. I'm doing the Camino Português. So I'll be in Portugal into Spain. And so there's that. I've been studying some Portuguese and walking a lot. And then also in a couple of days I fly out to Nashville, and I'll be in Nashville, and then heading up to Kentucky where I'll be at the SURFA conference. And I'm excited about that. First of all, I've heard great things about the conference. I'm excited to spend a little bit of time in Nashville and Kentucky, which I've spent a little bit of time in both places, but not a lot. And then I really love, I've been routing tours earlier this year. I was in Florida. I hope to get back to North Carolina and, just up the eastern seaboard, the southern end of it. And so this conference, hopefully I'll make some more connections in that area and be able to build up my tour for maybe the end of 2025, certainly 2026 in that region. Yeah.
Good deal. You know,
Yeah,
it's live in the moment, but you can also look to the future, with those
that's
kind of
right.
things. And I think it is important to look to the future also, to kind of have some goals for yourself, those kind of things. But again, take care of that personal self is, really
Yeah.
important. And when you do, those songs will continue to come because you're an observer, you know.
Yeah,
So
I hope so.
I don't think you have to worry about that. But
I hope so. Yeah, the the creative process is so interesting. Tricky, sometimes tricky and interesting always.
sometimes. So I thank you for giving me the time. I know you're often running to the next thing
Yeah.
for yourself. But any last words for new songwriters that are starting? Um,
Mm.
kind of. you know, tidbits that you can kind of give to them to encourage them to keep going?
Mm. I think that being curious and passionate about something is ultimately the most important thing. And harness it when you have it, because there are times when you won't have the energy that curiosity and passion create a force in you that drives you. And when you don't have that force, you don't move forward as much. And so I would say, do today the thing that is, you know, stirring in you. Don't put it off for tomorrow or next year. Um, and I do think that the we have more energy when we're young than we do when we're older. And um, we're always today the youngest we will ever be, right? So do today what you have the energy for, because we don't know what kind of energy we might have tomorrow.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah, no matter what age I mean, that applies whether you're like 15 or 35 or 65 or, whatever. I think that it's like today we are the youngest we will ever be. So let's use our youth, use
Right.
that energy and passion of the youth.
Use everything we got.
That,
Yeah, that's
that's
good.
right.
Well, great. I know you're
Yeah.
you're you're running and you're getting ready to go on tour again and a folk alliance and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to
Yeah.
become a very busy girl again. This
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
coming
Chris,
week.
is always so great to talk with you. I love that we bump into each other, along the road, and it's, your energy, your joy, and your delight at being part of the music world is always so eh, contagious. Can I use that word even though we've been talking about the pandemic? That's
Yeah.
the positive side of contagion.
Yeah. And I have to tell you that I really refer a lot of songwriters to look at what you're doing and look at your page and you know even your Patreon, just kind of see. I think we learn by watching success and then choosing which way you want to go. So it doesn't have to be exactly
That's
the
right.
way somebody else is doing, but um but it can spark other ideas for ourselves, those kind of things. So that's why I even
Yeah.
started the
Yeah.
podcast in the first place. So
I will,
so
I was talking with a friend of mine the other day. He was pointing out, this songwriter or that songwriter or this other songwriter, and he was kind of talking about what each of them is doing. And we were just saying, like that's amazing. Like that woman who's like, got a regular thing on Twitch, or that woman who is killing it on TikTok, or that songwriter who's like, got the stellar Patreon or mailing list or tour schedule or whatever it is. It's like there are so many things to do. We don't have to do them all. It's
right,
like and this is the thing that I have found. It's like find the thing that brings you joy and make that the center of your bullseye and just lean into that. If you're not into TikTok, who cares about TikTok? Like if you're not into Twitch or Patreon or whatever, I think the number one thing, whether you're into it or not, that is a very smart thing to do is to build a mailing list,
hmm
because MySpace doesn't exist anymore. And one
right,
day, Meta also already the algorithm is not in your favor. It's like, have, you know, Elon Musk knows he's not after the money, he's after the data, right?
right,
Like the most valuable thing you can have is a mailing list.
yeah.
So that that is like in terms of music business, that's one thing I would say.
And it's personal, getting back to personal connection to the
Yeah,
people who love what you're, because again, I'm not a songwriter. I come from a fan perspective. So musicians say what we feel, right? So then when you really connect, you connect hard, with that kind of
that's
stuff.
right. Yeah, that's
So
right.
that's what all this is about.
Yeah,
So if people just chill about that, how many numbers do I have and all that kind of stuff, they're getting back to it's a one-on-one situation. You
that's
want to
right.
get one person, you don't want to have you need to have everybody, just have the
Yeah,
people that are interested in what you're doing. So thank you so
yeah,
much. I know you have to run. I know I'll see you out there at a conference or one of your concerts or something like that. So thanks for giving us the
yeah.
time.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. Take
All
good
right.
care.
Thank you. So that was Arielle Silver, just a wonderful songwriter, human being, loves to connect to other songwriters and the songwriting community. She's really done a lot in the past couple years, and she's getting some accolades about it. So I like everybody to hear where they're coming from and where they are. You can go to her website and hear all of her music, and it will be down in the notes. Also, it's ariasilver.com, and you can see all the things that she's been doing. You can see how she's grown, and a lot of it she's done on her own. So prioritizing that, that life that you have, and, the personal side of you, time for songwriting, and then time for the business to make yourself succeed and move forward. And so I hope to have more women songwriters that we're interviewing here. Thank you for joining us today. Please share this recording and YouTube video with your music friends, and I hope to see you again. This is Chris Fletcher from Music Biz Mentors signing off on the Making Money, Making Music. Thanks for joining us.